So when was the moment that you realized you're sitting down, I'm assuming at a desk? I don't know what you were doing at BMW, but I'd love to know what the job title was. And at one point you said, that's it, forget it, this is not me.
This is considered normal culture by today's standards, and it was a very small thing. But I do remember the moment, which is when, I worked in an office with 10 or 12 other people, and the culture of kind of sending emails from this desk to that desk and from this desk to that desk, those are the things that just weren't me.
John.
Peter.
Welcome to the Unbrandme podcast, the Bandwagon podcast, where we unpack the stories of brand owners, entrepreneurs, and disruptors to understand how their life stories and lessons have impacted the brands and businesses they build and lead. Over the last 18 years at Bandwagon, working with so many great clients has fueled my belief that better people make better brands, and better brands make a better world. I've chosen you to be here because I believe you're one of those really few individuals who can really change the world for the better. And the brands that you put out there are a testament to that. I'm here to unpack the story, to ask you a few questions about, your backstory and how that led you to create, the brands that you've built today. You're obviously extremely famous for Dr. Juice, but there's loads of others behind there, and I really want to kind of get behind that. So, John
Great.
Winfield.
I'm honored to be here, really.
Welcome.
Thank you.
John, the son, the brother, the father, the DJ,
Yes.
the friend, the challenge cyclist.
You would know all about that.
Yeah, the entrepreneur, and more popularly known as the Dr. Juice. For those who don't know John, who do you say you are? Touched
I mean, I'm always going to be just John to anybody that I meet. You've touched on a lot of things that I am, and they're the things that some of the things I've achieved in my life, and some of the things that I've developed in my life. So I kind of see all those things as building the identity of John.
Yeah, so you're all of those. And for those who might not be familiar with Dr. Juice yet, maybe they're not living in Malta.
Yeah.
The story goes, two Spanish brothers and an English guy walk into a hostel.
Yeah.
The English guy drops a brick on his foot.
Yes, it was a very long time ago when I was backpacking, and it was a lovely story with two Spanish brothers. I ended up in a hostel, and I was kind of taking care of these two Spanish brothers who used to love to drink lots of wine every single night. And they had really bad hangovers in the morning, a fruit and veg shop out in the front, a blender in the hostel, and I started to mix combinations for them to get over the hangovers. So therefore I became a doctor of juice. And the first Spanish brother, Carlos, kind of called me Dr. Juice.
Dr. Juice.
And that was the light bulb moment back then. We're speaking about 18 years ago now.
Wow. So let's go back before that. So you were brought up in England.
Yeah, I was brought up in the UK, Skegness, a small little seaside town where that was my first relationship with food and beverage service. It was a tourist town, so I'd done every job you can imagine, from serving donuts, fish and chips, candy floss, burger bars, cocktail bars. Every summer I was working in a different sort of touristic type food and job to earn money in summer. So that's where my F&B thing started. And even that relationship with kind of food service, hospitality from a young age. I was, 12, 13 years old. I was collecting plates in a cafe.
That'd be illegal now, but anyway.
Yeah, okay. Skipping that on.
No, I think it's really important, and I think it's a really important part of the story now.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that was it. I went out to work 12, 13 for a summer job, and I learned from so many people back then who I kind of then saw as mentors, being the young little rascal running around in the fish and chip shop, So, yeah, that's definitely where that love, I think, for food service, hospitality, customer service began for me. And then I went off to do my A-levels and to university, where I did a business degree in Birmingham. And then I went off to my first proper job at BMW. One year in, after that, I kind of felt like that corporate world wasn't my place. And it's a very hard position to find yourself in, where you feel like you need and you want something more in your life. You've got these dreams and these aspirations, but you've followed the usual plan that's been laid out in front of you, you know, do your A-levels, go to university, get a proper job, you know, and so on, this conditioning. So it was very hard to sort of have that conversation with my parents at the time. I would have been, you know, 20 years old or something like that, that it wasn't for me, and I wanted to go and find out what was for me, which was what my one-way trip to Australia was then.
That was a one-way trip to Australia?
Yeah, one-way trip.
So when was the moment that you realized you're sitting down, I'm assuming at a desk, I don't know what you were doing at BMW, but I'd love to know what the job title was. And at one point you said, that's it, forget it, this is not me.
This is going to sound strange. I mean, I was a sales and marketing coordinator, so I was in the sort of sales and marketing team. And, you know, this is considered normal culture by today's standards, and it was a very small thing. But I do remember the moment, which is when, you know, I worked in an office with 10 or 12 other people, and the culture of kind of sending emails from this desk to that desk and from this desk to that desk, it didn't feel right to me. I kind of used to stand up like, oh, you know, what do you think about this? And sharing ideas in the way that I do. And I remember this whole vibe about, you know, not communicating with each other, turning up to work in a suit, kind of leaving your personality at the door and then somebody else coming in. Those are the things that just weren't me.
Yeah, you know? So basically the decision was also impacted by the fact that this is not who you are. This is not who you're going to be. And you couldn't see yourself. So you did the next best thing. You bought yourself a one-way ticket and you went traveling. Yeah. You landed in Australia all alone, I'm assuming, or you went with some friends?
No, I went all alone. No, I went all alone, met somebody on the plane and just kind of on a shoestring, just went from one place to the next, bought a big yellow Toyota Hiace with a sheepskin seat covers and a nice 8-ball gear stick and a mattress in the back, and I drove all the way around. I spent a year. You know, at the time I didn't know what an impact that trip would have in my life.
And that changed everything.
Changed everything. And it started with that curiosity to understand like who I wanted to become. Mm-hmm. That's where it started, that journey. And you never know it at the time, but then you look back afterwards and say that was the time in which, you know, I got to grow and develop the principles which started Dr. Juice. They're all written down in and I'm almost getting goosebumps talking about it. I, you know, wrote all of those things in my journal, you know, sketching the first logos and the first mission statements, and, you know, they were very rough and
I'm sure
completely irrelevant now, but that was the seed, you know.
But you were journaling before it was a thing, no?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, John, as far as I remember the story, you got a call from your mum, no? That they moved to Malta. So they left the UK, they moved to Malta, they got a property.
They got a property in Spinola Bay, and they had a ground floor commercial shop, and they were going to rent it out. And this was, you know, probably a month after my eureka moment with Dr. Juice.
Okay, so you had already planned that you were going to do something in the juice industry. Amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I had that there as it was positioned in my head as a potential, you know, path that I could take. And then when my parents said they were going to rent a shop in Malta, obviously I'd grown up with Malta, coming over here as much as possible.
Because your mum's Maltese, right?
Mum's Maltese. And I just, you know, then the two just became one. And I thought, this is it. This is my chance. I said, don't rent the shop. I'm going to catch a flight back and, you know, begin.
Yeah. And the beginning story isn't as glamorous as one might assume. No, there's a brick by brick story there.
Yeah. I mean, you know, when they said they had a property ready, what it meant was we've got a 2-story townhouse that needs demolishing and rebuilding. My dad's a builder. So, you know, obviously we had no prior experience building in Malta because from the UK. So he took, you know, 2 stories down with a jigger and some scaffolding. We both did like health and safety, like alert for that. I remember actually seeing him on like the last tiny patch, like just jackhammering away what was left of a floor. But, you know, he's my dad. I trusted him. We got the job done. And I remember, obviously, when we dropped these 2 stories, there was a huge mountain of Maltese stone, very, very heavy. And there was a skip outside and a wheelbarrow in front of me and my dad. And he was like, I was like, Dad, we can't move all of that. We need to get some machines. We need to rent something. We need to get a company and we can't do this, just me and you. And, he always always remember the story, we'll do it, son, just one brick at a time. And that mentality has stuck with me in this journey, that no matter how big a problem is or how unachievable it seems, if you do take it one brick at a time, piece by piece, sure enough, 2 stories ended up in a skip and my biceps got a bit bigger.
Not doing too bad, I think.
Thank you very much.
And of course, your dad is not somebody you can say no to, is he?
No, he's a very tall, 6'4",
full
giant.
Of life, right?
Yes, friendly giant.
Yeah.
So it was a very close relationship with me and him, and and the rest of my family too, but specifically with my dad when it came to the building part. Because we got to share that time together, and it was priceless and precious in starting the business up.
Yeah.
So it has a very strong roots to family, Dr. Juice, and still till today.
Mm-hmm. So I want to talk about those principles and those values, in fact, of building the Dr. Juice family.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really interesting story because obviously, how many outlets are there at the moment?
There are
Dr.
10
Juice?
outlets now.
There are 10
Malta.
outlets.
Yeah.
And obviously you've been very successful with some of the outlets. Some outlets you opened, some you had to close again.
Yeah.
And also the formula changed a lot.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the people.
Yeah.
Because fundamentally, when you were running one of the stores, it's one thing, and there's a long story over there of all the different shifts that you did then, and the team obviously at the time.
Yeah.
But as you grow the culture and you're attracting all these different people to work with you, how do you keep those principles alive, and how do you nurture that culture?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean it's a really difficult process, especially when you're starting out as a one-man band, to manage to kind of escalate and scale the business while still keeping the principles. It was very, very difficult. But once you open one store and then the second store, you can easily manage that. You can split yourself equally between 2. So it's kind of like, I remember, the first employee that I got, walking out of the store, seeing my name up on the wall, and then my first employee, like I realized that person's represented me, my dreams, my ambitions, my future successes. So then it became apparent to me how important it is to build a culture whereby people that come for a service are going to have the same experience over and over again. And I didn't want this just to be a regular experience, I wanted to create something special, something unique, something that stood out. And the great thing with, Dr. Juice and the health business that we've built is that it has the potential to create life within it, because it's made from life. So
that's a really interesting angle.
So as I grew and scaled the business, to really build that culture was a personal endeavor, because it was kind of like, you have to sprinkle what I've learned and what I know to be success personally across this community of my employees. And as we got bigger, 4, 5, 6, 7 stores, you get to that sort of point, you need to then build in a team around you, and you need to start building, writing the principles down, communicating them, having proper induction things. So it starts off as a personal endeavor, and then as your sort of structure starts to build, you can attempt to kind of build those pillars in the business, which then we communicate. And
I think you've been running Dr. Juice for how long now? Just
15 years.
Just over 15 years, exactly. Yeah. And over 15 years, the world has changed. We've been through pandemics. We've been through a complete digital revolution. Malta, the fabric of Malta has changed as well.
Absolutely.
So even, I think there's a massive difference between the people who served behind the Dr. Juice counters then, and also the face-to-face interaction with your customers, and today, the digital interface with your customers. So there is, I suppose, that lack of, of relationship building, because now it's through an app, and some of those apps aren't even yours.
Yeah.
And also the people who work behind the counters today aren't people who've maybe been brought up here, and maybe more foreigners. So. Yeah. Surely the dynamic has changed.
Absolutely.
How do you manage that today?
Yeah, absolutely. If I look at how much the industry has changed and how Dr. Juice has changed with it, because that's one of the most important things. I think that you're aware of the environment that you're trading in, and ideally kind of start to lead with, pioneering different things to kind of bring the change in these markets. So the most important thing is being aware of what's going on and not being afraid to change. There are so many moments in my life and with the career where, you start to build up fears associated with it's something as simple as a menu change, there were products that I released that at the time people kind of, the greener juices and the vegetable juices in the beginning, that was like too much for people, they didn't like the taste, it wasn't sweet enough, it wasn't creamy enough, so we started to develop different products to try and build the range. And when you make these decisions, you're always scared that you're going to lose customers, but you've got to keep your eyes on moving forward, because if you stick with the same recipe, you'll become obsolete and irrelevant. Yeah. So everything from the way that the business operates within the industry, and from every aspect, whether it be labor, the marketing, the production process, the service process, you just have to be aware of all these things and do your best to kind of let go of those fears and be courageous. Yeah. And mistakes will happen, and you'll learn from those, and you'll end up in a better place. It's happened so many times. Okay,
so many questions I'd love to ask you, but let's just peel back one layer. Yeah. You just stopped and you just talked about challenges, and I saw that face, as it changes. Obviously, in the album of your mind, you just relived a bunch of those challenges. Yeah. I've witnessed you go through a number of those challenges, and I know how hard you've fought and how hard you've worked to fix those challenges. Which moment in your life, in your business life, okay, and we'll touch on the personal side later maybe, but which challenge in your business life was probably the most impactful moment where you were wondering how the hell are you going to get over this big mountain? And what did you do?
I mean, it has to be the COVID for me, because that was the biggest sort of right turn for multiple reasons, not just because of the pandemic. Also, the delivery business in the same moment sparked off in Malta. So yeah, that was the biggest challenge that I had, because it came from nowhere, like with everyone else, and obviously it had a massive impact on our business. So we have a huge operating infrastructure in the way that we'd expanded. So, the sales need to keep turning in order for the machine to work, because if you stall the sales, everything else is buckle. So I think that was one of the difficult challenges. And for me, the first place I turn is the people within the organization, because they were the ones at the time that could help us get out of the trouble. And I needed them on side, and we need to work together. We didn't lose any, employees.
Which is amazing.
We kept it. We adapted very quickly to have new operating procedures. At the time, we were a smaller company, so it's easier to change. We were very sort of pioneered the sort of delivery thing very quickly. We knew that it was an important part of our business, despite the fact it had lots of operational challenges and the extra packaging and the time and the commissions. But, we really pioneered that, and that really set us up good from beginning. So we acted really quickly, so that as well as we could have done during the pandemic, we did, and we had great success.
So I witnessed you going through that. I remember even I was living in a rental apartment at the time, because I was between houses. And I remember you actually coming to my house and delivering a box full of the ingredients of my favorite raw protein charge. Yeah. And from my side, as our business was really, really crumbling, and we went through, obviously, like the rest of the world, we went through so many unprecedented change. Yeah. You looked like you were crushing it. Yeah. But clearly you were crushed at the same time.
Absolutely,
And I think this is really important, because I think on the outside, people see, what I saw in you, John, was this immense amount of creative genius, just loving life, this amount of resilience that you had. You were just going at it, and you were just picking up on any idea that you could, and maybe some flew, and some stuck. Yeah. But I think that was like really, really key. So for me, like anybody out there who feels crushed at the moment, like what's your message?
Yeah, I think in that moment, I think what it was that kept me going was, I looked to embrace the creative side that I have. And, you look within to find a creative solution to the problem that you have. And instead of worrying about all the problems, and this is something that, I do regularly when I'm feeling crushed, is instead of, feeling all of those problems mounting up, like the big 2 stories worth of bricks, I get busy in the solutions, because that's when your energy starts to change, because you're focused on, oh, maybe this will work, or, this idea, we can try this, or ask this person, or collaborate with them, or, and you start looking outwards instead of inwards. And that way you can sort of move forward.
Amazing, John. John, I'm going to jump onto more of the personal side.
Yeah.
Maybe an interesting fact that a few people know about, but most people don't probably, is that the DJ in you, the musician, the music side, the artist side, the creative side, which is completely different to obviously the entrepreneurial side that most people know.
Yeah.
I mean, tell me a bit about sort of the DJ world. And I know, hands up, I've never watched you DJ, so I have no idea whether this is just all hype or you're really crap. But assuming that you are actually a good DJ, and you still keep it up now.
Yeah,
so I mean,
course.
That's kind of the, the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I don't think it is, because I think that music nourishes the soul.
I agree.
Music is about community, and food nourishes the body, but food is also about community. Like, how far is the play there, and the similarity, and as you're talking to me about all the different things that you've tried, I was a musician before I did this, and I know how it is when you play a song and it's just not landing, and you need to try something different. And just as you said that, I could see you just pick up a different LP and put it on. People still use LPs. Talk to me a bit about that, about John the musician, and John the entrepreneur.
So a bit of background, my father was a DJ in the 70s, so, big afro, flares, putting out all of the 70s and 80s hits, So I grew up sort of, listening to music with my dad and watching him sort of play all of my birthday parties, which was like terribly embarrassing for me at the time. But all my friends thought he was the coolest guy in the world.
I still think he's really cool.
Yes, he is. So I did, I sort of grew up with that. And then when I went off to university, I had a few trips to Ibiza. And that was where I kind of developed this love for sort of like, I always liked disco, but then it went to sort of house music and disco and putting the two together. And it's very soulful. And, I started DJing through university, spent most of my time at the record shop instead of at the library. And it was just a part of me which really clicked, because obviously, music, once it's in your soul, it's in your spirit. It's the way that you want to like experience life. And definitely on the music side, when it comes to how that incorporates with my life, I see it as in, if you watch a movie without any sound effects or any music in the background, it wouldn't have half the impact that it would. So when you transfer that depth into John the entrepreneur, everything has to have kind of depth in order to make an impact. So that's kind of on a broad stroke level how that sort of I see music and spirit coming into the things and decisions that I make.
That's amazing, John. And I think talking about that, obviously there's a whole concept of music not being stuck, but music as something which is always moving and evolving. And you are not just Dr. Juice. You've played around with so many other ideas. I've seen so many ideas come to life.
Dr. Organic.
And I get the call and, Pete, I've got this idea and we're going to do this. And what do you think? And this whole creative genius is great. Talk to me a bit about your latest project, which I believe is more you than Dr. Juice is still you. Obviously, Dr. Juice is still a big part of you, and it will never go. But I'm really interested in finding out more about the new project.
It was a opportunity I got with a particular location, which wasn't which was too close to a Dr. Juice. So I loved the location, and I'd had the idea in my mind for a while to open up a new concept, which was free of the sort of Dr. Juice brand. So the business is called Word of Mouth, WOM. And the idea was to create a business which kind of was promoted via word of mouth, because obviously the landscape of digital, advertising is just so noisy. So I thought a really clean-cut name, which would also kind of that gives you that spark of that secret, the place you don't know about. Have you heard about it? It's a bit of mystery. And this is kind of a really cool brunch and cocktail spot. And, I kind of brought all the things to the table that I wished I'd have had when I started Dr. Juice. So all the professionals that we worked with and a lot of the chefs we have in-house and my impact on the menu and the service. And we've got a 70-disc, 7-inch vinyl jukebox in there to give it a nice centre pin of music and atmosphere and originality. Obviously, I still kept the healthy vibe with some of the dishes because that's in me, and I think it's important. People want it. But yeah, it was a kind of older, more creative expression of what I think food service is.
Yeah, and I think that's really interesting and an interesting point to share, because obviously me coming from the branding side, I love the fact that you did not impact a brand that was working, a brand that is really sort of, true to itself, by just bringing in different frivolities and innovations to the brand and taking them into another brand. And I think that's great. It shows discipline.
Yeah.
And talking about discipline.
Yeah.
To do what you do with the same 24 hours that everybody has, obviously discipline comes into it. And I've seen, your principles behind Dr. Juice brand and obviously still, word of mouth. Mm-hmm. How do you live those principles every day? Mm-hmm. So how disciplined are you in terms of taking care of your health, also having fun? I think it might actually be worth talking about what are the Dr. Juice principles. Yeah. If you need any help, I'll remind you what they are, but I know you don't.
Yeah, so obviously the three kind of pillars of Dr. Juice came actually from something my father said in passing in one of his DJ sets, and you know it all too well. He was doing a fundraiser, and my kind of dad has got this really deep microphone voice, and he goes, everybody, life is about living, loving, and giving. And that's his, and it kind of that really stuck with me. And I think it really nicely represented, obviously the DJ set was in Dr. Juice Gazira, it was streamed, it was a fundraiser, so it was the giving part already. And, living your best life and sort of staying active and movement, from the live perspective, loving what you do and doing what you love, and obviously giving back and making a difference in whatever way that may be. Those three things accidentally became the pillars that we've built Dr. Juice from.
Well, you say accidentally, but to be honest, I don't think it's just by accident. I think over my years working with entrepreneurs and founders, I really feel that the initial principles that a founder brings to the table, just like a father and a mother bring DNA into the family, I think are the things that make a brand live. I think what I see is the importance of actually, really staying true to what made the brand what it is when it started at inception stage, and what are the ones that we should cling to, and then how do we make sure that we maintain them and nurture them to grow as the business changes, as the brand changes, as culture changes. And I think that's really critical. I find more issues working with companies where the founders have kind of stepped back, or there's been a transition and the business is going through a succession. And my biggest advice to people starting businesses is write down, journal if you wish, journal your principles, talk about what's so important to this business, what's so important to you, and make sure you live them and talk about them practically on a daily basis, and lead by example, so that in 5, 10, 15 years down the line, 20 years down the line, they're never ever forgotten, because they're the real important things that made the business what it is.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that's really important. I wonder where we're going to go to next with this conversation. And I think one thing which I think we've had many conversations about is the importance of sustainability.
Of course.
It comes back to the principle of loving and loving what you do, but also loving, the community that you're with, and also the planet that we're on. And I know that you've struggled in this really delicate balancing act between what is fit for purpose and fit for the planet, but also fit for profitability, because without making a profit, we're not going to pay the wages anyway. How do you manage that, and what are the innovations that you're working on at the moment? Obviously,
Yeah.
the ones you can talk about, of course.
Yeah. So yeah, obviously, you know, my own personal sort of ethics and my own conviction as John, I try to impart as much of that as I can onto the business Dr. Juice, but some of them fit and some of them can't yet. They need a bit of work, or we need to develop in different areas to make it possible. So obviously there's a lot of times when I've had a conflict. For example, our biggest issue is packaging.
Yeah.
You know, it's the one thing that we try to cut back as much as we can, but then we've just had the technology innovation of delivery, which means there's an awful lot more sort of takeout and things. People have expectation of how the products need to be received, and they need to be delivered professionally in order to keep the sales up. So one choice might be better for the planet, but worse for the customer. So which one do
So
you
it's not
choose?
just profitability, it's customer experience,
Exactly.
sustainability, and profitability. I mean, it must be a real tough balancing
they
act.
all have to work in obviously harmony. Can't have one without the others. And but unfortunately, sometimes you need to be a bit bold and take a step forward, even though the customer experience might decrease. I think as long as you're talking through your social media channels and online about the things that you're doing and give people enough notice, you know, we've always kind of moved forward on that front. So when it comes to reusables, which is where we really want to go, obviously recycling, reusing is kind of, you know, the next step. So, you know, we have a few projects in the pipeline to work with local businesses to actually put a new sustainable solution forward. And even the way that it's been designed is kind of to encourage customers then to adopt this, because it will be seen as something really cool and something that people really want. So I kind of try to dampen the customer resilience by making it nice and shiny. A new concept. So
yeah, and I think that's obviously quite a difficult challenge, of course, because I mean, you mentioned working with local suppliers, working with local farmers. I mean, there isn't the amount of supply that we need, and I think if we look at the supply chain today, I think just coming from a very small island like Malta, 27 by 11 kilometers, the amount of agricultural land that there is, the seasonality that we have is going to have a huge impact on you to create a resilient, sustainable flow of the right, you know, ingredients to continue to satisfy your customer needs. And obviously, and this is obviously a sticking point. I mean, you know me and how strongly I feel about the environment, how strongly I feel about the planet, but I still go out there and buy my avocados, which have been shipped from God knows where, from which community. And I think there's a real paradox in that how do you live a sustainable life? How do you lead an exemplary way, but still nourish yourself and still keep, you know, things going in the right way? It's just, I mean, is there ever going to be a solution?
I mean, obviously, I think as people, we can only try and do the best that we can do. But, you know, just in the same way, I always think when I saw the COVID-19 change impact on society, as in, you know, we all had to wear masks on our face. We had to take masks everywhere with us. Like, we can do it. So if policy then comes around that we can take our own reusable, you know, we should take our own reusable cups, plates, forks, if we expect to eat a takeaway meal, you know, we've seen from the past that once that change is made, that we can follow suit and we can adopt new procedures. So I think it's about, you know, maybe trying to put a bit of pressure in the right places to enforce, to bring about change, or to create solutions which others will then follow. And we hope to do that with our new reusable this year.
Plans. Yes. Brilliant. Do you want to take a break?
I'm good.
You're good? Okay, great. Good. Super. John, I'm going to move on to the practical, everyday John. Okay? So not the Dr. Juice John, not the word of mouth John, the other John.
Other John.
The other John. I think because obviously we're all transient. You know, everything that we do is transient, and who we are at the time, you know, depending on we're in front of our mum, in front of our best friend, in front of our partners, our kids, and our employees. What inspires you? What inspires you? What wakes you up in the morning?
Yeah, and that motivation, you know, a lot of it has changed over the years because, you know, when you become a father, you develop this whole new sort of desire to provide for your family, this nesting feeling. When I was originally, starting out, obviously, it was just to not fail, because, in the beginning story, it was kind of, it was a bit of a family intervention. People thought that, my idea wasn't going to work and that I shouldn't go ahead, and kind of, I decided to ignore them and go ahead because I had that belief. I bounced out of bed wanting not to fail. So that was kind of the first thing that pushed me
So that
out.
was a big thing for you,
Yeah,
making sure you prove everybody wrong.
I can do this, I had the, I didn't know how, but I knew I could. And it was just that really ignited me in the beginning. And then obviously once you start then to, develop a level of success and things start working out and going the way you want them to go, you kind of go a little bit deeper then, about what gets me out of bed is not profit. Mm-hmm. What gets me out of bed is making a difference to the people I employ and making a difference to the people that we serve.
But what inspires you, John, and what serves you? Because obviously, I've been running the business for a while now as well.
Yeah.
And in the tough times for the business, I've been obviously the beacon of light for the guys. And I put all my pain and all my struggles and all my worries and all my put that shit away and just go out there and inspire people. Because I know it's something that you do really, really well, and we've spoken about this. Yeah. But that does not mean that I don't have my bad days. And we talk about mental health, we talk about mental fitness now, because I prefer talking about mental fitness than mental health. It's just really hard to keep yourself, inspired and motivated and being able to motivate others. So what's your hack? At least let me steal your ideas.
For me, what inspires me, and when, I have these different spells of inspiration, for me, travel has always been a good one. By the time I'm on a one-way ticket, I have to go alone for this to work. It's my little process.
That's your thing, going out, traveling alone.
And kind of by the time I'm at the airport, I'm already kind of, like this sponge, just pulling in all my different ideas, ingredients. I'll always buy Men's Health on the way out, which talks a lot about current topics in the health business. And that kind of sparks, whether I'll see an ingredient I like, or a new exercise, or a new concept, or a new place, or a new speaker, I'll get inspired. And then obviously once you're out of your comfort zone, you start, taking in all these cues of different things and different ideas, tastes, flavors, opinions, people that you meet on the road. So then when I come back to Malta, I've always got a gigantic, I keep notes, like a huge list. And some of those ideas start to spark things off and start to give us a new direction. And I come back inspired. And then that is sort of contagious throughout the company, That's
really interesting. So your journey, your curiosity, which is obviously a big, deep thing for most entrepreneurs, is what always keeps you fired up. Just that constant search for the next big thing, the next new thing. Yeah. That's really interesting.
You've got to keep changing and evolving and redefining yourself and changing the goalposts and keeping agile and keep moving
and just keep evolving all the time.
All the time, and then actually, what's interesting is this part of the journey. I've brought quite a lot of young people into the company. I believe in promoting as many as that I can from within, so that anyone that works for my company knows that if they've got a passion or they've got something in them that they want to explore, we can power up that potential. And I love it when I see somebody transfer from the shops to the kind of the office or on the field. And I think that process is really special. And what happens when you bring in young people, new blood, people that had the same journey as me, they worked in the stores, they come into a more professional setting, they start to create change as well, and it's new change, so that new influx of energy, I think really helps the company then to start changing in ways without my hands. And I like to see these new ideas flourish, and new people bringing new recipes, new concepts, new ways to do what we do.
I think what's really inspiring about that, John, is the fact that, and I don't know if you're familiar with the blue zones and the people who live to over 100, but there's an element of serving, and there's an element of community. Yeah. And I think those two things are clearly something that really is a big part of you.
Absolutely.
It's interesting to see your pattern, which is why Unbrandme is the reason why we've called this project Unbrandme. It's because, unpacking your story from those days when you were 12, 13, working within the service industry.
Yeah.
Where you were serving up food and your fish and chips and your donuts and all that, and we can catch up on that at the later stage.
Yeah.
Your service as a musician or as a DJ, entertaining people's soul, and now grabbing everything that you've learned and passing that on to, to the people that are by your side, to the people that you work with on a daily basis, and also your customers.
Yeah.
Because I do believe that a lot of what you do goes in there as a term of service to your customers, which I think is really important.
Yeah.
One thing which you missed out on this year, but I know was really important for you, was the Nila Juice 100-mile swim challenge. And you've been backing Nila Juice. So for those who don't know, Neil is the ultra open water ocean swimmer, always trying to beat his own records.
Yeah.
And you've been backing him with his nutrition, backing him with sponsorship, and I know that charity is a big part of you.
Yeah.
And that giving back, I think, is important. Talk to me a bit about the way giving back makes you feel, but also being part of a cause.
Yeah.
How important is that to you?
Yeah, I mean, for Dr. Juice, it's hugely important, and I think, we don't exist as a business in a vacuum. We exist in this community. So the more that we can connect with that community, the stronger the business will be ultimately. So, we try to stay visible in, different sectors, whether that would be school or charity or sports or retail. We try to keep a presence, and even in the corporate world, so that we can connect with the people in our community, so that, that will help drive sales and build that trust or that, following towards what we do. So the giving part is definitely during the later phase of Dr. Juice, especially in these last 5 years, where I really realized that we've got the platform to do good, essentially. So I think, as we have a responsibility that once we develop that platform and the opportunity to actually make a difference or do something good by supporting, for example, Neil, make his dreams happen. It's a dream come true for me personally, and it's great for the business. In
fact, I want to unpack that a little bit more, because it's nice and it's lovely to hear you speak about how important it is to give back to the community. But I know how deeply impacting it is for somebody to get onto a big challenge like that.
Yeah.
And it's when you give, when you really get back. And I think there's a lot of business leaders out there, there's a lot of marketing managers out there, there's a lot of community people out there who are really sort of in charge of kind of, CSR budgets and all that.
Yeah.
Who make an impact on, like, where are we spending our money? What should we be doing with it? But not many people just get their hands dirty.
Yeah.
And I think if there's one message which I really wish that you could share with our audiences out there and with future entrepreneurs, is how important is it for people to really get their hands dirty?
Yeah.
And how did that make you feel, and how did that really impact and change your life?
Yeah, I mean, I think giving is an art, and as you said, in giving we can receive. And I think when you approach anything in life or in business, if you lead with, the kind of intentions to give or to be generous or to be open or to trust, I think when you have that vulnerability in yourself and that decency, I think then that's where, the best leaders and the best businesses are born from that. Because you're always going to build connections with people or industries that one day are going to come back and serve you even better. So I think if you're leading with those intentions, I think ultimately success follows.
Amazing, John.
Yeah.
John, we're getting to the end of the podcast, but before we end, I feel like there's something missing that we haven't talked about.
Okay.
And it comes back to the giving part.
Mm-hmm.
Was it 2 years ago now that we did the Alive Challenge? No, it was a year ago.
Yes.
It was last July.
Yes.
So July 2021.
Yes.
No, 2022. Yeah,
yes.
2022.
June 2022.
June 2022. Okay.
We got there.
February 2022, you ask me, should Dr. Juice sponsor the Alive cycle around Sicily?
Yeah.
How many kilometers was it? 1,000 kilometers?
1,000 kilometers.
1,000 kilometers to circumvent Sicily to raise money for cancer research.
Yes.
And I said, John, of course you should sponsor Dr. Juice. Dr. Juice should sponsor the Alive cycle. And then I told you, John, but I know that you've been through a lot with COVID and everything and all that. You should do it. You should go buy yourself a bike and go and do it, because I think that's what's really going to be important for you. Yeah. And you say, Pete, that's a great idea. If you do it, I'll do it. Thank you very much, John.
Yes.
So I keep blaming everyone that it's your fault that I did what I did.
Yeah.
Obviously, the difference is this, that I was a seasoned cyclist.
Yeah.
Well, seasoned by, at least compared to you. I was the seasoned cyclist. I actually had a bike. You didn't.
Yes.
And you, in February, couple of months away from doing this actual big challenge and big adventure. And it was a big feat. We were cycling 160, 180 kilometers a day for 5 days. You just went out there, you bought a bike, had absolutely no clue what you were doing.
No.
Despite me telling you you're doing well, John.
Yes,
you had absolutely no clue.
Thanks for that.
I mean, that really changed you. I mean, I saw a very big difference between you starting that journey and ending that journey. I could see the way it impacted your life. And I think two things. One's a question, one's a statement. So for me, the statement is, like, you are an incredible person.
Thank you.
You're extremely inspiring. Your resilience is ridiculous. Because I didn't have a rearview mirror, but I heard the thump and I saw you get up after the crash, which was second day, I think.
Yeah, second day.
Second day. I heard your groans and your grunts as you were climbing up hills, but you didn't let go.
Yeah.
What's your secret?
Yeah, I mean, it was the people that kept me going through that. I mean, in the beginning, I felt like a challenge is great to sort of, in the same way, we get out of our comfort zones and we can prove to ourselves what we can do. Our mind might tell us we can do 100 kilometers, but in reality, our body can do 1,000. So I think that gap between how we hold ourselves back as people in our minds and what our bodies can actually achieve and what we can actually achieve physically, there's a huge gap there. And so that challenge was about kind of bringing together the two. And the secret was the people that helped me along that challenge, because I had no experience, but I had a good mentor. And obviously when it comes down to the tenacity you need to keep going, that is where you really dig deep and you actually discover you're even stronger, or you're even more strong-willed than you anticipated. And that's done through the collective challenge. And once it's done and dusted, once you get through that start and end point, and then you can take that knowledge of yourself further on in your life.
Amazing.
Yeah.
John, 2 final questions. I promise I'll let you go.
Yeah.
Question 1. To the 21-year-old John Winfield out there who's planning to rebuild the business or to impact life in some way, what are your words of motivation, of inspiration on building new brands? So what is your, like, if you had to give somebody like 3 tips, 1 tip, what is it?
Yeah, I think you've got to stay close to your passions. I think if you stay near to the things that you love, you're always going to find success. And I really do believe in the culture of, as leaders and as entrepreneurs, that if you have the intention of giving in many different ways, that's ultimately going to lead to better success. People think you're a little bit crazy, being generous or being open with people. But ultimately, in the long run, I felt like, from what I've seen from different leaders and from the things I've experienced in Dr. Juice, ultimately, you're going to get the best results.
That's an amazing piece of advice. Okay, so the final question.
Yeah.
Soundtrack of your life. You got to pick one song.
Go on. I think it would have to be Christopher Cross, Ride Like the Wind, because it's a song between me and my father, and there was a modern remix of it by Joey Negro. And it's a song which collides with my world and his world. And when you look at the way that I've lived my life, and when you listen to the lyrics of the song, I find it's very inspirational for me. So definitely, Christopher Cross, Ride Like the Wind.
Ride Like the Wind. Thank you, John.
Thank you, Pete.